For the average retail investor, Web3 just has become uninvestable. And in 2023, do you want to guess how much the average project that listed on Binance was worth at launch? If you do a fully diluted valuation, the average was 4 billion.
Billion.
With a B, which is simply ridiculous. BorgPad will address a very specific issue, which is the capital formation and token distribution. We're calling this whole movement Better Than Sex, CEX. We've launched deals at 15 million FTV, which is unheard of in Web3, which gives you a lot of upside. We can be a voice of clarity in what will be a very noisy environment.
This is Violetta, Chekan, or VC. Indeed, I am a venture capitalist. I have 12 years in startups and early stage investing. And this is season 2 of a 2+1 with VC show. And each episode we have top entrepreneurs and investors in crypto and blockchain. And today we have Daniel de Lophem, who is building right now on-chain spin-off of Swissborg. Swissborg, just to remind you, this is a crypto wealth management platform. And I had recently Cyrus Fazel on my podcast already a couple of months before. It's a very interesting what is BorgPad is building right now. They're basically reshaping the rules for founders, retail investors, and Web3 community. Hi, Daniel. It's nice to have you on my podcast.
Hey, Violetta. Absolute pleasure being here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And it's so excited to have another member of Swissborg here. So I would love to hear your story a little bit more. I know that you have been a founder yourself. So, and then you joined Swissborg. So, and now a co-founder of BorgPad. I would love to hear what is made you become a founder and then joining the Swissborg and now being the co-founder of the BorgPad.
Yeah, it's great following Cyrus, who did an interview with you a couple of weeks ago, a month ago. Swissborg, one of the fantastic things about it is that I think it's one of the only companies in Web3 that since the very start, they've aimed to do things differently. There's always a degree of philosophy in every product that's been released at Swissborg, and we always ask ourselves whether we should be doing what we're doing and not just following general trends. And so to give you the long story short about how I joined Swissborg and why it really matters to me. When I was a kid, right out of university, I was very lucky. I had a business that was actually in real estate. It had nothing to do in finance, but out of that, I had the means and the time to follow a bit my passions, which was more finance directed. And I got in contact with the European Central Bank, who at the time were issuing their first governance board to look at CBDCs and issuing a digital euro. The same as the UK and even the UAE, who've looked at digitizing their own fiat currency. And I always thought it was quite dystopian, and there was quite a lot of potential abuses of power that could come out of this. And the necessity for doing a digital, if we were to do CBDC, doing it properly with protections and safeguards for the end consumer was very, very important to me. As you can imagine, if you have a direct liability that's issued by a central bank that's programmable, and we've seen this in China when they were issuing the digital one, there's so many things you can do with it that could lead to potentially good things, but also to very dangerous aspects, such as you could add expiry dates to money. You can say what people can spend money in and what they can't. And this was just in the wake of COVID. So I think all of this narrative was very present in all of mine. So I started there, got in touch with them. And after 8 months, we were entangled in endless bureaucracy, never ending stories. We actually created a very cool layer 0 protocol for them on how they could potentially do this whilst preserving privacy of users. Yeah, as you know, anything from the government side, it tends to be very bureaucracy heavy. And we started being in this endless loop of bureaucracy that's just led to a stand down of the project. And to be honest with you, quite defeated. I then I met Anthony, who's a co-founder of Swissborg. I wrote him a really long email, which was probably quite junior for me. I just pulled my heart out telling him, listen, this didn't work out, but I like what you guys do. Let's have a conversation. To which he then answered yes. He got me onto his product team. We started doing all sorts of products for Swissborg, grew the company from there. And now, 3 years later, we are looking at spinning off Swissborg into BorgPad, which will be its very first on-chain product. As people here may or may not know, Swissborg is one of the biggest exchanges in Europe. But we started being a centralized exchange just because it was 2017. DeFi was not even a thing. But we have strong believers in the future being on-chain, and BorgPad will address a very specific issue that we're seeing right now in Web3, which is the capital formation and token distribution aspect of Web3, and how new players come into the market, how venture capitalists like yourself invest in project, how that has an effect to the wider industry, to retail investors. And we kind of bridge a bunch of gaps here that I'm sure we can talk about, but that's the mission of BorgPad, where we're heading next. And that's ultimately how we came into Swissborg. The same mission of liberating people, making them financially free, empowering them from the bottom up. Swissborg has done through the application. Now BorgPad will aim to do directly on chain by allowing them to invest into early companies at the same terms as VC and the same level as VCs.
You look so excited when you start talking about this. So why have you been chosen the co-founder for BorgPad?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Anthony and I said Anthony's the other co-founder of Swissborg, and we've been talking for a while. We've been progressing naturally, our relationship. We get along really, really well. And I think we, most importantly, really align philosophically on what we think needs to happen in the industry. We see the same issues, we see the same solutions, and I think we complement each other quite nicely. Cyrus is still heading Swissborg with Anthony, and Anthony now kind of branches out on both sides and co-founded BorgPad with me, alongside with some other people from Swissborg, but we're the main people behind it at the moment, driving it with a very small, dedicated team. And I think it's just a natural complementarity. Swissborg, the whole vision of it, I think, and anyway, companies in Web3 going forward, I don't think that in 10 years' time, we're going to see many new unicorn companies that are going to have tens of thousands of employees like you have in Google, Microsoft, and the previous generation of tech companies. But instead of having this vertical scaling, I think Web3, because at its core, technologically speaking, it's a coordination layer. It's the ability to coordinate all sorts of systems from the bottom up. The scaling of companies included will probably more be horizontal. So instead of having Swissborg with a massive umbrella with thousands of employees in there, I think the idea is much more to start spinning off ideas of Swissborg that we've held for a while, convictions that we wanted to materialize, and creating spin-offs that complement Swissborg in a very, very good way, and create value chains up and downstream from the main company. So that's how we see it right now, and that's how BorgPad has been created, alongside with other great projects like Xborg, who are in the gaming space, and I'm sure many more to come.
So tell a little bit more, what is BorgPad right now, and how does it integrate with the current Swissborg app?
BorgPad will be the new way of launching tokens and being able to invest early on as an investor. So right now in Web3, we've had big issues with how founders can get to market. If you look back at the history of Web3 from the get-go, we had the first big era, the big meta token, the token meta, if you want, that was the ICOs in 2017. And that's where Swissborg comes from as well. We raised 52 million in 2017, which was one of the biggest ICOs back then. But the issue with the ICOs is that there were many scams. And for every one Swissborg, there were 999 not so serious projects, some of which failed with dignity, others who just took the money, open a foundation in Switzerland or any other offshore country, and retired the entire bloodline through that. So that attracted the eyes of regulators, arguably rightfully so, and ICOs essentially got regulated to death. Following that meta, you had the privatization of the primary market that was occurring progressively. So with ICOs no longer being an option, we came back to an old playbook, which was to take the primary market, so before token launches, before in equity terms, before an IPO, and have the capital formation occurring from VCs, angels, and just generally speaking, institutional investors. All of this is fine. But what happened afterwards is that, first of all, philosophically speaking, it's not very Web3 to do things behind closed doors from the top down. But beyond that, we then very quickly realized that because of the ICOs and because how the last couple of bull markets happened, there was a great amount of power in the token distribution aspect of the industry. In other words, the centralized exchanges. If you've been around for crypto for a while, you will have heard the sentence or the two words, very infamous words, when Binance. When Binance is the holy grail for any new founder, any new project. And the reason for that is that typically whenever you got listed on a big centralized exchange, the biggest one being Binance, your token would explode upwards in terms of price action.
It's true. It's true.
Whether that was justified or not. But so there's a great amount of power that came with centralized exchanges, and they essentially became the gatekeepers of Web3. And so it didn't take very long for investors and distributors, so the centralized exchanges and their partners like market makers, to understand that there's a big value loop here. So what happened is that in the primary market, you'd have endless private rounds who would also sometimes be influencer rounds. Well, you start from a pre-seed rounds, you do a 5x up on a seed round, you do another 10x up on a Series A, and you do some kind of strategic influencer round in the middle. And then eventually you end up on a Series B or ready to launch at valuations which are just astronomical. And we did the math, and in 2023, do you want to guess how much the average project that listed on Binance was worth at launch, fully diluted valuation?
Let's say like 100 average.
100 million on average?
Yeah, let's say, yeah.
If you do a fully diluted valuation, the average was 4 billion.
Billion.
With a B, yes. This is not a joke. We did on average.
No, on Binance, right?
On Binance. So project that listed on Binance during the last during this last era was on a $4 billion FDV on average, which is simply ridiculous because most of these projects don't even have users.
I'm investing in early stages. That's why maybe I'm like looking more like on the early stages. That's what I also looked. But also even like with those valuations, sometimes like for retail investors, like thinking like what is the potential for you to invest? And like if it's like 1 billion already, what is the potential for you to grow with your token? That's a very interesting point.
Yeah, so you essentially already hit it on the nail. The issue was that the distortion of value was so high because what the prioritization of the primary market allowed these institutional investors and distributors to do is prey on information asymmetry. In the past, whenever you said one Binance and something listed on Binance, the project, when people would blindly invest into it. In fact, 2-3 years ago, people didn't even understand the difference between a market cap and FDV. I think this is something that has now been vulgarized, but it's not that long ago that we really made this distinction. And so we've had a series of companies that listed at these crazy valuations. Even, Eigenlayer last year received 100 million net inflow from A16Z pre-product, which is crazy. So you had these numbers that were just becoming meaningless. And as you rightfully said, for the average Joe, the average retail investor, Web3 just has become uninvestable. And the consequence of $4 billion FDVs on average meant that if you, as this time retail investors, were to have invested in every single Binance project at launch, as soon as it get listed, we take the first buy order we can. On average, we would have done minus 10%. Because some of them went up, but the majority went essentially down. And this is at launch, not like after. This is the very first possible moment, meaning that essentially, and adding to that, whilst you did minus 10%, the early investors are up 1,000x. So you had a price anchoring that was so artificially high that even when the price went down and down and down, as we saw, and 9 out of 10 projects last year that were listed on Binance, so 90% of the projects went effectively down after listing and still are. Even if they went down 90%, the early investors that invested in seeds and even Series A were still up net, whilst you were heavily underwater. So that created a PvP state, a player versus player state, a zero-sum game essentially in Web3, which compounded with the bear market made things very, very hard. And I think people got disillusioned.
Like, let me just say, but this is also creates like, in terms of like early investors. So if you are going listed on this and you have like 1 billion, like right away, so there is like very good incentive for you to just sell your token.
Absolutely. And that's essentially what was happening. You had institutional investors with unlocks dumping on retail investors, market makers doing their thing, also doing option calls on. Anyway, the whole thing is just a mess. And essentially we took retail investors as the core of Web3, the community, what defines Web3 as exit liquidity. Yeah. And they become exit liquidity. And so that creates a very predatory state where those who know prey on those who don't know. And it's really everything that we don't want this industry to be. And when you look now at meme coins, you can see them as fun dogs and images and cats and hippopotamus and whatever. But really what they are is an act of rebellion against that. Because with meme coins, all of a sudden you came back to project tokens that were created from nothing, from the bottom up, where investors could again start from zero, and it was owned again by the community. the desperation and the act of rebellion was so high that people were willing to rather invest in the things that by definition have no product, never will have a product, never will try to improve the world or drive innovation of any sort, rather than keep investing in this overvalued sex cartel tokens that we saw. And the issue with meme coins, as I just pointed out, is that it's not a future. It's a distraction that could be entertaining for a while. But if our industry gets reduced to meme coins, we don't have an industry. Because what are you going to do with an industry filled with only cats and celebrity asses and hippopotamus? It's not. So what we want to do at BorgPad is take the learnings from meme coins, allow retail investors to participate in project alongside VCs at healthy, open, fair valuations again, with healthy terms, and distribute the token without these inflated intermediaries, so directly through DEXs, and let again people win together and grow the pie and elevate ourselves from the PvP state that we are now into a positive sum game, and hopefully something very, very positive for the industry. We're calling this whole movement Better Than Sex, CEX. Just to clarify. But this Better Than Sex movement is a philosophical cry against the sex cartel, but also against meme coins. We don't think meme coins are bad. We think they're there for a reason, but we need to go beyond them and take our learnings from meme coins, launch fair at healthy valuations, let people win alongside the institutional investors, make it open, fair, and transparent, but do that with serious project that people can actually believe in. I think there's a big gap for a belief system in Web3 right now, and that's what we want to create again with Better Than Sex. Get these good founders on board, get people with conviction on board, and launch good projects for the future.
How does it integrate? Is it will be like a different app, or is it an integration with the Swissborg app?
So right now we're building this on chain. Just as I said at the beginning, Swissborg was done off chain as a centralized exchange because
exactly
exists. So we're doing this now on chain first. It will be on Solana, so you can just connect your Phantom wallet, whatever you may have, and participate directly there. There will naturally be integrations as well for the Swissborg app users. One of our very good products that we have is called Alpha, which is simply early deal investing. It's our umbrella for, we've done about 50 deals over the last year with really good projects. Sold out, I think, close to 100 million now in volume. And so we're definitely going to use that part of the product as well. But the idea is to transition it more and more on chain. So there will be integrations. It will still be seamless UX, which is something that Swissborg is known for. But the idea is that this is on-chain focused, and for a very good reason, because ultimately what we're seeing is that capital is rotating on-chain. That's another thing that meme coins allow us to see, is that you no longer need to be on Bybit, on Binance to actually be successful. So much capital is rotating directly on chain.
You said about like lessons, and we talked about evaluations, etc. So what lessons from Swissborg Alpha deals that you already have seen? As you said, you have been already investing in more than 50, right? 50 projects that is like last year, and you just launched. Because I also know I talked with Cyrus about that. I talked with some of your team, like me now as well, about this. It's a super fantastic program, which I'm also like looking at right now at some projects. Not a financial advice, but I love that concept. So which kind of like lessons do you take from this Swissborg Alpha program that you are taking to the BorgPad in terms of valuations, in terms of projects, in terms of maybe also some selection criteria, like which kind of project do you want to select?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the whole thesis of Alpha keeps evolving naturally with time. And if we look at and also it will be my subjective point on it. If you may ask different team members, they'll give you a different answer. But I think a lot of the learnings were that we need to be very selective on the degree of conviction that you can find in a product. So my point is, like, there's a lot of copy trading going on in the primary market. One thing that you cannot copy trade is conviction. So you need to establish for yourself a very solid basis and thesis on what you think will work going forward and what the industry will gravitate towards, and then hammer that down over and over and over again. Be pluralistic, take your chances, understand that it's still a high risk environment. You're talking about very early deals, but do that. I'm going to sound a bit wishy-washy, but there's a lot of sense behind this. Do the right things, but for the right reasons. And I'm going to explain what I try and say with this. One of one of the key thesis for what I think is that the industry will have to evolve inevitably towards consumer apps. Right now, I mean, this is not necessarily alpha. This is something that I think many people has been reaching consensus progressively. But even when you look at the DEF CON and the last few big conferences that we've had, even on Solana, in particular in Ethereum, the importance that we give on the technological aspect is still, in my opinion, completely asymmetrical to what we need for adoption in retail investing. So whether we now have the 107th L2 that will marginally improve TPS or do some level of abstraction on accounting, etc., it doesn't really matter. The tech has evolved sufficiently that now we need to understand, how do we get people into Web3 beyond speculation? Right now, it's a very speculative industry from start to finish, and you see that all the product market fits in the industry are still speculative. Pump.fun, Polymarket, whatever you want them to be, they're still based on the idea of speculation. So for me, the main thesis is, how do we find the best project that elevate the space beyond speculation? And that's how we're going to make it grow in a very healthy way, in my opinion. So there's a bunch of then sectors that can help help that happen. I'm very bullish on Deepin, very bullish on DeSci. Obviously, AI plays a big role in AI and agentic AI systems, particularly. So that's kind of where the focus has been going to. There's also a big thing to say about identity and how we can leverage, again, the core model of Web3, which is authentication of data in a permissionless way for identity aspects. And that's what we've been focused on. We've been finding founders that we see are there for the right reasons. They believe, they breathe this narrative that they're in. And then obviously we also need to see whether they're in for the, and one of the aspects of seeing whether they're in for the right reasons is also seeing how money greedy they are. And launching projects at a low valuation, in fact, the lowest possible valuation, is typically the way for us to go. So you've seen the early private deals. We've launched deals at 15 million FDV, which is unheard of in Web3, which gives you a lot of upside. And people that understand our philosophy, we send them a big due diligence sheet. Then that's a very good base for us to work together on. We also put a lot of emphasis on community. I think a lot of the issues as well from the previous meta that I described earlier is that community became itself more of a meme. And the way we got community going was by promising airdrops, doing quests that were meaningless, like retweet me or like this tweet. Like, it's none of this is actually substance. It was just engagement farming. And we found that this new generation of founders now, some of them start to really realize what it takes to build community from the ground up, which Cyrus is a great example for. He was a guy who was there since 2017, every single week on Twitter answering. There's no magic formula for building community. You need to do it, the honest work. It's slow. It consumes everything that you have, but that's a kind of like the non-tangibles that we look into founders and projects. If all of this aligns, then there's a fair chance that we might do something together.
You mentioned so many great things, and first of all, I like this authenticity, like building community with authenticity, and I think this is what is really, really important. Once community really believes in the project and they invest in this and contribute to the project, that is a beautiful thing, and this is where the adoption also comes, right? I would love to talk about also retail investors. Valuation is one of the things as well. So sometimes, so as you mentioned already with Binance, right? The launch of the project sometimes comes with very big valuation, and then you're basically, as an investor, like retail investor, you look at this from how many X can I make from it? Right. So because retail investors, which are also investing, they also have the financial incentive. So how does these low valuations will align with also community, with founders, and also for retail investors with going for the future returns?
I mean, if you talk strictly from an ROI perspective, obviously going for normalized, healthy, low valuations changes the whole game. As you mentioned earlier, if you invest at a $1 billion valuation, what's the upside on a project that has less than 1,000 users? It's very hard. The risk reward ratio becomes very distorted. I think, however, the valuation is a natural corollary of a certain type of profile of founders and investors as well. I think if you abstract of the numbers, what investment and something that I feel very strongly about is investing itself is, in our capitalist society, the single biggest proxy for time that we have. So what I mean with this is that we spend all of our lives, you, me, exchanging our days, exchanging our time for money. If we do a good job at it and God willing, we get more money than we need to tangibly survive. And then that money becomes a proxy for our time investment. So if you extrapolate this, investing and the reallocation of my money means the reallocation of my time and my belief system. So if you take that as a retail investor and you look beyond ROI and you're like, okay, if tomorrow we all collectively put our money into, to give an example about this, if tomorrow we all collectively give our money to Elon Musk, we might be on Mars in 10 years. He doesn't actually need the money, but just to exemplify. Because again, money will enable that to SpaceX to progress quicker. We might have flights going to Mars much sooner than we otherwise would. If contrarily, we all give our money to Mark Zuckerberg, the future we will live in tomorrow will be very different than that one to going to Mars. So again, when we talk to our investors, our Swissborg community, we obviously make a point about ROI and about making money. But whether you make a 10x or 20x, at one point, it doesn't matter that much anymore. So we set the basis that you will make healthy returns, but more importantly, the just return. You need to truly believe in the project that we're giving you. And if that level of conviction is high enough, then you will actually maximize the return on investment. Because if your conviction isn't high enough and you just look at, okay, this is a low valuation, so I might make a 4x, 10x, 20x on it, if in the best case scenario, you probably won't make it because you will sell before that to happen. You at the first dip, at the first increase of volatility, if your level of conviction is not strong enough, you will sell and you will not actually maximize the return. So again, we base ourselves first on the level of conviction we can build outside of the money, and then we can bring a healthy valuation that's in line with that afterwards. And then ultimately, I think this is where you can actually make the best returns because you will diamond hand it until the end, because the reason you invested in to begin with was not just the idea of making money out of it. It was something deeper.
With Cyrus, we actually had this also talk about like value investing and also like belief investing as well. And he has this 5 P's on how So the 5 P's to invest in crypto projects. I love that one. So also like if the audience haven't seen that episode, I would love to prompt them to watch that, because I think this is something really incredible and very interesting as a strategy as for anyone who is like especially new to crypto, how to invest in crypto projects. That is a really fantastic one. And I would like also to ask you, like, there's many launch pads, right? So how are you really different from others and from the traditional launch pads? Besides being on chain, of course, and the Swissborg community backing you up, of course. But what is your like key differentiators at this moment?
I think we can talk about product differentiators all day long, but I don't really think that's the most compelling part. Our key USP as a launchpad is the philosophical aspect and the type of project that we're going to be able to bring forward. If you believe in better than sex and you understand truly what better than sex means, which means not only, as we talked about now for the last couple of minutes, healthy valuations, but also means healthy tokenomics and distribution, meaning that you don't have excessive amounts of unlocks given to some shady, opaque players that may have invested early on, or KOLs that will just dump on you. It also means that the team is aligned with us on the long-term thinking, that they go beyond speculation. And again, they're consumer-facing, they follow the deep in all of this DeSci AI, all of these core theses that we have. That's a single biggest USP today. It will be the ability to attract these kind of projects at these founders at the best possible terms and give you the best possible experience as an investor to participate in those deals. That's the key USP, as simple as that. We're the embodiment of the better than sex philosophy era, and every project that will fall under the umbrella will share these key components and characteristics. So almost it's the curation part of it is a very, very important aspect, which at the end of the day is also the main reason why you would invest in any one particular fund or another, is how much you trust the curation of that fund.
Yeah. And Swissborg, of course, it also has a trust because of already of built community. So that's US spin-off project is also very interesting. Like being backed up by this community that believes in you. It's fantastic. How does it really work? So from the project perspective, when the investors coming in into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we talk about the product itself, there's three key aspects to what we do. So we take projects and investors with us all the way from the initial capital formation, so and very early seed or even pre-seed investment into companies. That's traditionally what emulating Swissborg Alpha and participating using Alpha as the product as a way to raise that money. And then we're going to use that money to create a very comprehensive launch strategy and launch the project with that strategy. So that would include the community building, activation, getting the right partnerships on board, the right people to be ambassadors for the project, and essentially generate enough demand so that we can go into the third step, which is going to be prepare the TG. And as I said earlier, until now, the key distribution model for early projects were listing strategies on what exchange can I list. I think the future will be much more one of actual just liquidity provision and just being able to be liquid enough to have trades to happen on DEXs rather than going on any centralized exchange. So that happens through a liquidity bootstrapping protocol. So on the first side, you can first invest early in the project like you would normally do. It would be a value investment, like a seed investment. And on the second step, you can then become a liquidity provider, an LP. And that will mean that you will invest into the liquidity pool of a given project. And that will be typically their token plus Borg token. Since we are BorgPad, we're going to see that liquidity pool, and that's then going to allow your token to be able to be traded in all the big DEXs on Solana and be listed on Swissborg as well, because we actually use that liquidity to be able to list you on Swissborg. So there will be, if you follow the whole value chain, you can be an early investor, you can be an LP, so you're going to earn fees from the liquidity pool, APYs from the incentives. And it's a very comprehensive suite of investment products. They're going to go from really early on all the way to the actual launch and beyond. And in the middle, obviously, there's going to be many ways that you can participate in terms of community activation, content creation, participation, all of this. So there's a lot of things that you can do. It will not be everything for everybody, but it's a very holistic suite of products that will address different type of investor and personas. And for founders, it's essentially the same thing just from the get-go. We help you raise money, and then we help you create the demands for your project so that we can list you. Once we see that demand threshold, so we're very data-driven in this approach, being there, then effectively we seed your liquidity pool with the money raised, and then off you go to launch with hopefully very good price action, given that you're going to have very low valuation. We're going to have generated demand, we'd have measured that demand, and you will have, as a consequence, high volume as well, which also helps in terms of many metrics on chain.
Very cool, very cool. I would love to try already everything. Like I would love to, as an investor, like I'm very curious about the projects, and I would love to go through this selection process. And yeah, I try to see what are the exciting projects that you're expecting. I would love to ask you so many questions, but unfortunately we don't have so much of time. So I have also prepared some cool game. So it's very quick questions, but sometimes they are just fun, sometimes they're personal, sometimes they're just professional. So it depends, but it's cards. And so usually you just will select the card, and then you will answer the question. But yeah, here's like a blockchain. I draw it all myself. Okay, so let's do the game. I will just mix them, and you will say stop, and I will take the top one. I will take it out. Okay.
Perfect. I love it. That's it.
Okay, let's do this. Oh. All right, so we have, that is very interesting. What do you want to be?
I wanted to be a sports commentator. I loved...
sports commentator. Okay, yeah. Cool. That's a cool one.
I had an idol in front of me. I grew up in Spain, and one of the coolest guys was this Spanish... I don't know if you ever watched Spanish football, but the intensity they commentate the matches is incredible. Like, and they scream like crazy. And I always loved it as a kid. And I was never good enough to be a player, even though I did play a little bit. But I thought maybe I could make it a sports commentator.
So cool. Actually, one of the person from my school is actually became the sports commentator, but he started with the football. Yeah. So it's yeah. I think it's very cool. I don't know. I don't know Spanish, although I can understand right now because of Portuguese language. But I
Mm,
can guess it could be really like excitement and with all like passion.
yes.
Cool. All right. So let's do the next one.
Stop.
Okay. So. That is a fun one actually. So if you have to delegate your fundraising to anyone, alive or like be real or fictional, who would it be?
Oh, that's a very, very good one. So fundraising for my own company.
Aha.
Well, I need to get someone who can be really compelling. I think I don't know if this is the most popular possible answer, but when I was a kid, I watched House of Cards, and the main guy, Kevin Spacey, he was Frank Underwood, who eventually became the president of the United States. And always thought he had a terrifying, eerie feeling about him. So, if you want to get something done, I think Frank Underwood from House of Cards would get it done. Maybe not in the best possible ways and most legal ways, but he'll get you the funds that you need to support your runway.
Oh my, I love that TV show, by the way. Yeah. So,
You know
yeah,
what I
and
mean?
the way they created also the character, I think it's so fascinating in a way of even like the camera, how it moves. And Kevin Spacey is a really great actor in a way of like how he was talking with the camera and like, and he's not always like positive character. Like you
No,
see
no,
him
on the
like,
opposite. I don't
yeah,
think
yeah, you see,
just to make sure, I don't think he's a role model. I'm not saying you should do it
no,
this
no,
way,
no.
but if you have to get money in, I think he would be a safe bet to get you to where you had to be.
I was expecting you would say like Elon Musk because just of his influence, like the influence. Because if he just like post about something, it's like it just has such a crazy influence. Yeah, and of course, yeah. So Swissborg, so the Swissborg team, that is like the dream team, right? For fundraising.
Of course, the Swissborg team, I mean, they will get anything done. But they will only work with you if you truly believe, if they truly believe in you. So they won't do it with everyone. That's a cool thing about Swissborg team. They're the super team for the right people. So it might not be for everyone.
You're
And that's
selective. You're selective, but this is also good because you're curating the process, and for me as an investor, that means trust. I trust you to curate this selection, which is cool. All right, so let's do the last one.
stop. I have to wait now.
Okay, so oh, that is very interesting. What contributed the most to your success?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Generally, I think it's just authentically doing what you really believe in. In whatever I always did, I never chased money or I never chased recognition. I just really thought that Web3 was a cool idea and got orange pilled really early on. I saw the way the fiat system worked that it wasn't right. It's the root cause of many, many evils, I think, in this world. Even the way we think about the whole consumption industry and like overly consumption industry, I think it comes from the idea of having very cheap money. If you start having hard money again, and you start thinking much more about what you actually need in life and what you don't. So I think fixing the root cause of money that we have right now would lead to many benefits for society. So it's something that's really struck my core for many, many years. And I was privileged enough to then find a really cool team like Swissborg to be able to grow with, keep working on things that I really loved and believed in, and be authentic among that, and always see success as a natural corollary from that. And you don't always get success. Sometimes you fall in your face, but that's fine. And yeah, just never giving up and just doing what you really believe in. I think then everything else falls into place.
Thank you so much. And I would love to also ask you like the last question. So how do you see the next year for like Web3 and how the BorgPad will contribute to that vision?
Yeah, I mean, very, very bullish, obviously, on Web3 with the recent events. If you think about even the ideas of creating a US Bitcoin reserve, I mean, what just happened on the election wise definitely has not been fully priced in yet. There's so much upside that still needs to come. There's a lot of danger as well in the bull market because everything becomes distorted, value goes down the drain, everybody becomes greedy, and that's where big mistakes happen. So I think we can be a voice of clarity in what will be a very noisy sea and very noisy environment. So to speak, a Batman signal, where to know that, okay, here is a safe haven where that values and fundamentals still persist. And I hope that we learn from the mistakes from the past, that we not just let greed overcome us again and re-enter a 4-year cycle that's driven by very unhealthy and short-termist behavior. I can't guarantee it, but we're going to do our very best to get it that way. I think Swissborg will play a key role beyond, obviously bringing new people into the industry, because again, I think we're one of the best on and off ramps in Web3 point, not just in Europe, but like literally. And then BorgPads as well on the capital formation side of things, and together as a philosophical umbrella for reason and measure and just sound healthy investment theses and plays. So I hope that's where we're going to go for the next couple of years. I don't think it's going to last a whole year. We'll see. It seems like very accelerated. I hope we still have a few months ahead of us, but it does seem very fast-paced at the moment. So we'll see. I think it'll be a year for a lot of volatility, but hopefully first a lot of upside still.
Well, thank you so much. This was my last question, and it was very great conversation, and it's my second interview with Swissborg team, and I'm so happy to see how you're progressing, and I'm very excited also about Alpha program and the BorgPad, and I think there is the real problem on the market, and you're filling this gap. This is cool, fantastic. Thank you so much. I would love to just prompt the audience as well to check all the links below and subscribe to Swissborg, try the product as well. So, and also check out the BorgPad as well. So I will leave all the links below, and follow also Daniel on his Twitter. I don't know if you're in LinkedIn or any other social media, but maybe Twitter is the best one, right? So, and of course, like, share, comment, and subscribe for the next episodes. We're bringing always like best and interesting founders and also investors to this podcast. Thank you.
Violetta, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.